It's time to take a look at the tank that causes havoc in World of Tanks console, and today's video is going to cover everything that you need to know regarding this tier 7 German tank destroyer that is amazing within World of Tanks. It's quite possibly a little bit broken for a tier 7 tank destroyer to be able to deal as much damage as this tank can give out. However, we're going to showcase what happens when you're using both the spotting mechanics, when you're using DPM, when you're basically playing how you should a stealthy TD. And that is exactly why we've managed to have a good replay on Prokhorovka, because when you match up a stealthy tank destroyer that has good DPM with a map that is very open and enables you to use your camo and your DPM, then of course you're going to be able to have a better replay than you'd probably think from most tanks. However, the key thing about the E25 is that this tank doesn't just have good camo. This tank doesn't just have great camo, this thing has amazing camo, and that is because this thing basically receives no real penalty from basically firing. It has an amazing kind of amazing camo whilst moving. It's really great to get into position, and as well as having all of that, you also have fantastic view range as well, which it's kind of like makes up for the fact that maybe you don't have the best camo ever for any tank destroyer, albeit this is unbelievably good. Yeah, this tank is like unbelievable in terms of being able to outspot opponents, and often if you get spotted, you probably knew that you were going to get spotted anyway, so it's not going to make a massive difference to you. However, what you can see me doing here is just trying to place a couple of rounds. Now, for those of you that know about tank destroyers predominantly, they are fairly slow. This one, nah, why not go 70 kilometers an hour in a tank destroyer that's the size of a pea and can basically outtrade light tanks and outswivel light tanks, as I'm sure you may see in the next replay that we have in the E25 lined up for you. However, this one is primarily focused on the stealth aspect of the tank, and hence why you're seeing me use this position. Now, for any tank in the game other than this one, or potentially the overpowered tier 6 on my right hand side here, the Hellcat 105, you probably don't want to be coming into this position. However, what we can do is we can roll into this little bush in front of me. Yes, I could have pulled back and done like the bush mechanics, which you're going to see here, to be able to hopefully get some damage out so I remain undetected. It's not working. You can't see any damage indications coming up, but we can hit and hope. Don't worry, the replay doesn't just stay at 135 damage, it does actually pick up as we go through, but the key thing that you want to be thinking about in your E25, if you do decide to pick this up, or if you've ever managed to pick one up and you don't quite get the hang of this thing, essentially what you want to do with regards to your perks, with your camo and setting this tank up completely perfectly, I've gone with advanced optics, I've also gone with advanced concealment, and then what I'm aiming to do is either use advanced power terrain or traction system to be able to get that higher speed, be able to turn, be a little bit more nimble, be annoying for the opponents to actually hit, and you don't really need very much else in this tank. And to be honest with you, it's probably one of the tanks where I'd say like you could play this with just 2 equipment slots and be very competitive regardless. As long as those were camo and concealment, then you'd have a very good day. Now, one thing that you're noticing here is that, remember, the E25 doesn't just have to deal damage to be consistently good, is you can actually just consistently track people. And that's what you're seeing here. Now, Fat Mops in the middle of the map is deciding that he's kind of going to YOLO our light tank that obviously has way better traverse speed than he does, so don't quite know what he's thinking there. But regardless, we're now pushing into the enemy spawn to hopefully get a little bit of damage on whatever's remaining, if there is anything left over. And of course, we do go for the SU-100Y, or 101 even, which is actually a very good tank now that they've given it a couple of buffs. and you can see he tries to blind fire us, but we pull even further down the ridgeline. And because this tank is so low profile, most of the time people don't even realise how low you are, and they end up just not quite getting it right. Now what you're seeing me do there is actually aiming for the Tiger II's engine deck, because you never know if you're going to get a fire, and obviously hitting the engine deck of the tank is going to warrant potentially getting a fire a little bit easier. However, don't really need it on the tanks that we're firing against. It's just a little bonus if we possibly can. We've run out of premium ammunition, which allows us to load the standard back, and that's one problem with the E25, is that you do have to fire a lot of premium to really make this tank work in the majority of matchups. Otherwise you just end up bouncing, and it's not really that fun when you're bouncing off of a pretty averagely armoured tank destroyer within this game. However, now you're seeing not the penetration, but actually the speed of the tank, and you can see it's actually an effective speed as well. It's not like you go 70 kilometers an hour if, you know, you're being pushed by a light tank or something like that, like the Super Pershing, where it says you can go like 50 kilometers an hour, but realistically you can only go like 30. This tank is actually effective, so you can get up to the top speed of about 68 to 70 kilometers an hour, dependent on kind of the speed of your tank and obviously how you're playing it. But that allows you to get into positions like this, where you can come up against some of these kind of pesky medium tanks. Now we do pick up a little bit of damage on the T-34-85, which is a fantastic tank in its own regard at tier 6, but not quite comparable to the E25. Now I think that's why I like the E25 so much, is because not only do you have camo, not only do you have all of the extras, is that it enables you to move and be flexible. And as we always say in World of Tanks console videos, is that flexibility is king. If you are able to go from one side of the map to the other pretty quickly, it allows you to do plays that are just impossible for tanks like the Maus, and that's why you don't really see that many meta slow tanks in World of Tanks being very good. And that is why I think you always have to have some element of speed to be able to really be competitive in most games, because yes, you might be a Maus and you can have a good game once every 10 games because the opponent's just YOLO'd you and you basically were in an outstanding position, but nonetheless, this E25 game was pretty good. 3,115 damage and 870 assistance. Is it the highest damage game? No, but that showcases exactly how you can play the tank. Cliff is the target of the next replay, and this is showcasing a sneaky position. Probably a very dirty position that I'm sure a couple of you will have known about from time to time, but often people don't realise that you can move up as far as you can on this side, providing that you have really great camo, and this is what you're about to witness. Now this is a very kind of risky strategy to a degree. If an opponent tank decides to just YOLO in, then you could end up losing all of your hit points very quickly. However, in this replay, yes, we have a T-67 that's going to be an absolute nuisance, and hence why you're not seeing me move at all, because I want to make sure that I don't get spotted. We're also not firing because we want to make sure that we're getting some assistance damage or potentially not getting spotted, because we're in a terrible position if we do get spotted to get taken out. So one thing that you'll note here is that I am able to fire, and that's big. I kind of tested the waters here. I didn't 100% know, but because of the bush that's basically in front of us, we're able to basically double bush, which allows us to remain undetected for the game. Now, one thing that you'll see here is that the Panzer SFL is now moving up. We've also got a T25/2, and we want to make sure that we can remain undetected as much as possible, and we kind of shut down this T25. You're seeing that the T25/2 has just spotted us, which is unfortunate, and now it's time to reverse. Now the tank isn't necessarily the fastest in reverse, but it can kind of shift on when you need it to, and that's kind of what you want. Now you'll notice that we go back into our little sneaky bush that we've been using in this game to be able to get a couple of shells into the Tiger 1A18, which is of course the Czech Tiger. I think it's a tier 6 or maybe even a tier 7. I can't quite remember. It's been a while since I played that thing. I know it wasn't particularly the best tank in the game, so we're not really going to worry too much. And considering we have probably one of the nicest DPMs that we'll be able to use in this thing, then I didn't really have to worry at all. And one thing that you notice in this game as opposed to the previous is that we don't have to fire much premium. You know that if you do fire premium you probably wouldn't be bouncing off of this T43, but you know, it's really down to whether or not you care about losing silver every single game, because the E25 can definitely do that, but that's how you have like the outstanding results where you do manage to pick up like an absolute boat ton of damage or a boat ton of enemies destroyed. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. However, you know, make up your own mind as to whether you think it's worth it. You can see here we're obviously focusing the artillery piece because we all know how taking out one of those feels, but that means that we're kind of in a good position. Like, the artillery is probably the worst nightmare for the E25. Should they hit with an artillery, you do not have armour whatsoever, and that's what the E25 suffers in, is armour model, but it can't have everything, and it's pretty much got everything other than armour. And that means that you can be very powerful in a lot of situations, and you can see here it's time to advance. The enemies are kind of dwindling away as we're moving forward, and we can obviously shoot on the move because, you know, why not? Able to shoot at 60 kilometers an hour into opponents that literally have no capability of doing anything. Now we finish the P43 BIS. We've got a heavy tank up there that gets taken out, and there's a medium and a heavy tank left alive on the enemy team, and kind of showcases how quick you can end games, especially when you're top tier in the E25. And remember, this tank is a preferential tank, which means that you will never meet tier 9s unless you platoon up with your mates who are playing in tier 7s that do meet tier 9s, then effectively could get this in a tier 9 game. But if you're signing up on your own, if you're signing up with mates who are also playing in this tank, you will never see tier 9s with this tank, which is of course what many of you have been wanting or asking for. But this has been in the game a while. Preferential tanks have always been a thing, and it's usually because if you were to go up that tier, they'd become pretty bad. But the E25 in general is a solid, and I mean very solid tank, and I'm sure that you've seen that within these two replays. They're not the highest damage replays, they're not the highest spotting damage replays, but they showcase the kind of aspects of the E25 that I like. And of course, let me know in the comment section down below. Don't forget to check out the showdown video that we did on the T54E2 and the T77, the autoloading American heavy tanks at tier 8. Really amazing video to kind of showcase both of them, see which one's best and stuff. So let me know in the comment section down below if you like that one, if you've already watched it. And of course you can check out the gameplay and tank reviews as well that we have on this playlist if you're interested. Hope that you join me in one of those, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Goodbye.